Hello everybody, welcome to my channel. My name is Chris and in this video it is all about wood. That's right, the What Would You Make challenge, and we will get more into that later. So with all that being said, let's begin with DIY number 1.
Alright, as you can see I have an assortment of spindles. What I'm going to do is I still need to wipe them down, trim up any real bad imperfections. Like anything like this, I'm just going to cut a little bit off just to straighten up that edge. And then I'm going to turn these into carrots with the exception of one of these. I have another idea, but while I'm doing these, I'm just going to go ahead and prep it as well. Like this one has, like some of them have a lot of glue, heavy glue on them. So I may just with my miter saw just trim them off just a little bit to get a smooth surface. And these taller ones, because I'm going to need to stick some greenery in it, I'm probably just going to go ahead and cut off the very tops to give me a flatter surface. Same with these smaller ones. So I shall return.
And once I get all that completed and back in my craft room, I'm just going to take a drill bit, and on each of these spindles I am going to drill a hole through the top. Now it was hard for me to get a good angle of this, and that's because I really had to have it close to me in order to grip and push that drill at the same time. Just be careful if you do this. If you have a vice grip, that would be the best thing to do. And I'm sure I'm going to hear it from my husband when he watches this video. Sorry, baby, had to do what I had to do. And once that's complete, I am going to grab the color Summer Crush. This is from DIY Paint, and it can be activated with water. So just FYI for those of you who don't know, which I'm sure most of you do. But I always like to stir my paints prior to using them. And once I get that all stirred up, I'm just going to grab me a chippy brush. And I have two chippy brushes. I have a softer one and I have a more rough one, I guess. And I'm grabbing the rougher bristled one, and I'm just going to go over all of these carrots. Just do a messy dry brush. And once I've got that paint dried down, which I do with my heat gun, I am going to go ahead and take DIY's clear wax, and I am going to go over all these spindles with that clear wax. This is going to help protect that paint that can be activated by water, because you definitely don't want somebody to spill a little bit of water on it and the paint start coming off. So I picked my greenery up from Hobby Lobby when it's on sale, and I'm going to use these bushier ones for the smaller spindles, and then I'm going to use the other ones for the longer spindles. So when I go to cut and prepare the bushier greenery for the smaller spindles, I would first trim off a stem, and then I didn't like the length of it. You are going to need to trim down the stem part. And right here is where I just took a piece of that wire stem and just put in the piece that I took off of the other piece. So they weren't going to be as tall, but I still wanted the bushiness. Just like that. And when you have two of those together, it is going to be a tight fit, but the smaller ones, the tight fit, I didn't have to use any glue. I just was able to shove them on in there and they stayed perfectly fine. Now when I get to the taller ones, those I just went ahead and put a little bit of hot glue down the hole, and then just took a stem and pushed it in there and held it until that glue set up. And voila, pretty as can be. And as I mentioned in the beginning, this is the What Would You Make challenge. This challenge is hosted by Rustic and Lace DIY and Divine Designs. And this month's special guest host is Farmhouse Frugally. You can find all of the links to their channels in my description box. You will also be able to find the link to the playlist, and I hope you will consider going and checking it out and showing everybody a little bit of love. And to all of you coming in from the playlist, I would just like to welcome you to my channel and hope you will consider hitting that subscribe button and become part of my DIY family. And to all of my current subscribers, thank you guys so much for coming in week after week. I love you guys. And with all that being said, let's continue DIY number 2.
Okay, so this spindle, I've got one of these large knobs, got the flat, and then these are the number 0 biscuits. And I've already started filing one. So what we want to do is these have got a flat. See how flat they are? So we are going to go ahead and round it. And in the bottom, we want to try to kind of get it as narrow as possible.
Or you want to get that into like a point is what I'm trying to say. And because that point is going to go into a little hole that we're going to be drilling on the top of those wood beads. So you'll just have to play around with it. So on one end, you're going to have it rounded for the top of the bunny ears. And then on the bottom, you're going to have it pointed so we can put them inside some holes. And they'll pretty much look like this.
All right, so with the knob, I'm going to take a 3/16 drill bit and try to drill a hole.
So when you're drilling the hole, you want to make sure you get that hole large enough and deep enough to fit the tip of your little wood biscuit in there. So you may have to play around with this just a little bit if you decide to make one of these. And what I like to do when I drill my second hole is I like to hold my first ear right there just to get an idea of where to put that second hole. And once we get the holes just right, I'm going to take some wood glue. Wood glue is the only glue for this that I am going to recommend, and that's because when you use this wood glue with those two wood pieces, as it dries, it's going to make those two pieces pretty much become one on a molecular level. And so I'm just going to squirt some wood glue in both holes, and I want that wood glue pretty much coming up to the top of those holes. You see, I'm just going to kind of tap down a little bit, fill it up until it's nice and flush with the top. And then I'm going to take both wood biscuits at the same time and I'm going to put them in the holes with the pointed side down. And then I'm just going to figure a way to hold both pieces with one hand and wipe up any excess glue that's kind of coming out. I don't want too much of that glue, so I'm just going to grab a baby wipe and just kind of wipe away some of that. And I'm going to hold these there until that glue starts to set up and those ears will stand up on their own. And then once they do that, I will set them aside and I am going to let them dry for 24 hours. I want to make sure that they are cured and set up, and when I handle it, they're not going to break off. And after about 30 minutes, I'm going to go ahead and apply some wood glue to the top of my spindle, smooth it out with my fingers, and then I'm going to take that bunny head and I'm going to put it on the top of that spindle, and I'm going to hold it there until it sets up and doesn't slide around anymore. And then once it does that, I'm going to set it in an upright position, and that's when I let it sit for 24 hours. And I get back to it in a couple days, and what I'm going to do is grab some walnut gel stain, and I am going to go ahead and put that stain along the ears and the head of this bunny so it will match the rest of the spindle. And when I put the gel stain on, I am going to start at the ears, then I'm going to apply it to its head, and I'm not going to wipe back anything until I get this completely covered. That way that gel stain has a little time to sit on that wood piece, because of course I want it to be as dark as possible without any of the sticky stain residue that gel stain can leave behind. Then I'm just going to use my heat gun to dry that down. And when I was staining around the ears, I noticed that the wood was a little rough. So I'm just going to take me a little piece of sandpaper and I'm just going to go around the edges of those ears and just sand down any of that rough wood. Next, I'm going to grab a white paint, and I am using the Fusion All-in-One paint in the color Casement. And you always want to give this type of paint a good stir because it does have a sealer in it, so you want to get that mixed up. But then I'm just going to take my rough chippy brush, and I am just going to take some of that paint, and I'm going to do a very heavy dry brush because I want a white bunny, but that looks a little distressed. In my opinion, spindle crafts need to look a little distressed, but I absolutely love the way this turns out. All right, so I just went ahead and drew a simple face, and now I'm going to take the color Vintage Victorian from Folk Art Matte, And I'm just going to give her some little pink areas inside the center of the ears. And then I just kind of rub over it with my finger just to give it more of a subtle appearance. And then I'm just going to take a little fingertip with some of that pink paint and I'm going to give her some little cheeks. And I went ahead and made a little bow and I'm just going to put the bow in between her ears. And then I felt like it was missing something and then it dawned on me, it needs a little bunny tail. So I've got one of these little cotton balls, snowballs you can get at the Dollar Tree around Christmas time. And I'm just going to hot glue her a little bunny tail and then she will be complete. DIY number 3. All right, so I've got this little wood box here, and it was once a diffuser box. So it had a diffuser in there of some sort, because I had found a little piece of paper in there that said it was a diffuser box. So that's what I call it, a diffuser box. But I am going to first start by taking the hardware off. I'm going to take the hinges off. I'm going to take the latch off. That way, when I paint it, it'll be a lot easier to deal with. When you get all those hinge pieces and screws together, just put it in a little container. That way you don't lose it, or a little plastic baggie, because trust me, the last thing you want is to accidentally knock those pieces around and lose these little bitty screws. And yeah, those little bitty screws, in my opinion, aren't the easiest to find anyway. So just put them in a bag or a little plastic storage cup. And once I get all that removed, I'm going to take the color Vintage Linen and I am going to cover this entire box with the exception of the inside. And ta-da! It's all painted, it's dried down. Now I am going to take the paint inlay from IOD and it is called Delft Traditions Azure. I assume I said that right. And I've been dying to use this. I love this blue and white. I want to do my bedroom in these colors, but I'm just going to pick me some images off of here and I am going to cut them out. And these paint inlays are great because they've got the little block measurements on them. It just makes it so much easier to get them centered, lined up, straight, all the above. But I think this image, yep, right here is perfect for the top of this box. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take that same paint and I'm going to put a generous amount on there. Now you don't want it like all thick and puddled and pouring off of your surface, but you want a nice thick coat that's not going to dry before you have a chance to put your inlay down on top of it. And what I do is I take my mister bottle and spray the side that has the transfer on it. And then we are going to place that down onto our wet paint. And then I'm lightly tapping with my fingers just to make sure that's down. And then I'm going to grab me just a baby wipe, which is what I had available. And I'm just going to start tapping that image down into the paint. Inside this booklet, there are some trim pieces. And I want to use some of those to go around this rim on the top of this box. So I'm just going to pick me out some trim pieces and I'm going to cut those out. And I think these skinnier pieces are perfect for this box. So like I said, I'm just going to go ahead. I'm going to cut one out. I ended up using like one full strip and then a little bit off of another strip. I'm just going to pick a side of where I want to start because I'm just going to wrap it around where I can. And I will kind of rub over where that corner is. That way when I place this inlay back down, then I'm going to get it in the right position. So I'm just going to give my surface a coat of paint. I usually will miss the transfer sheet itself or the paint inlay surface itself, but I ended up just misting over the area I just painted. And I don't know, I think it just works the same. And I'm just going to let you watch what I do here. Now right here, I'm going to cut off the very end because I'm going to have to grab another piece of that trim and attach it to this piece. And at the end, it's got a little bit of a gap. So you don't want there to be a gap when you're meeting up two pieces. So I just trimmed that off. Then I'm going to grab me the other strip, and then I'm going to have to trim that end off. That way these two pieces will meet up perfectly. And once I know I've got it cut to where it's going to match up perfectly, I'll go ahead and apply my layer of paint, spritz it with some water, lay that area down, tapping it in with a wet cloth or a baby wipe in my case. Then take that other piece, line it up, and repeat that same process. So before I continue on with finishing up that trim, I was worried that I was out of, I can't remember why. I'm thinking I was worried that, I don't know, I ended up drawing down what I had on there already. I don't really know why. I just didn't continue. But apparently I thought it was a good idea to go ahead and get what I have already put down dried so I could remove the paper. So to do that, I just spritz it with some water to re-moisten that paint. That's going to help get this paper off, and then just slowly peel off the paper. And look how beautiful that is. And I am learning that when you use paint to put these paint inlays instead of a sealer of some sort, like an acrylic sealer, that it looks so much better on the paint. But I'm going to go ahead and dry that down. And then I'm just going to go ahead and get this pulled off of the trim area that I've already put. And I'm going to repeat the same process and pull that off. That is just so satisfying. And once I've got that dried, I'm going to go ahead and finish putting that last strip around, and I believe this is the back. And I'm thinking I wasn't sure if I was going to continue this all the way around, this trim all the way around to the back side. But once I got off what I had already done and looking at it, I thought, you know what, why not? So I'm just going to match up both ends the best that I can, trimming off, and then just repeat the process of applying a coat of paint, misting it with water, laying that I keep calling it a transfer, laying that paint inlay down and tapping it in, grabbing a moist rag and patting it in. Letting it dry and repeat that process. And I do use my heat gun to dry it down because I'm too impatient to wait. But you do you. And I just left this part in there because I just think that's so satisfying. What about you guys? Let me know in the comment section. Do you like watching people peel off that paint inlay to see the beauty revealed? Let me know in those comments. I really would like to know. Now, definitely keep in mind that these paint inlays are water soluble, okay? If they get wet, they will be reactivated and they can smudge. So I went ahead and took my Rust-Oleum spray sealer and I coated it with my sealer that way so I didn't have any running issues, because I don't have the best history I don't have the best history. Let's just leave it there. All right, I want to go ahead and wet distress my box. So I'm just going to take me a baby wipe and I'm going to go along the edges and just remove paint around those edges and sporadically throughout the box. I don't want it too distressed because I am going to be reselling this and I'm still trying to figure out what people who come onto my whatnot auctions and what they like. So there's that. I'm not fortunate enough to be able to find one of those booths to set up items like this to sell in my area. I'm going to try about 30 minutes away from here in a different town that I rarely ever go to. I think they might have one, so I'm going to check them, and fingers crossed they've got something like that up in that area. And I'm going to go ahead and grab some light brown sugar glaze from Paint Couture, and I'm just going to age the box up a little bit. I don't want it too terribly dark in age. And I was so afraid to go over those paint inlays. I was so afraid that even though I put that clear matte protectant on it, that maybe I should have coated it more than once. I was just so afraid it was going to be reactivated with the moisture from the glaze and start bleeding. So I was very cautious. And I started by just going around the image, taking a cloth, damping up some of that excess. But as I was doing that, I was like, well, this just doesn't look right. So I ended up eventually just going over the entire piece and blotting up the excess just to make it look slightly aged. And I'm not going to bore you with the process. It's pretty much just wiping it on and blotting it off. And once I've got that dried down, I had went ahead and put a coat of clear liquid patina over the box, and I got the hardware back on. Now I grabbed these little feet from Hobby Lobby in their woodpile section. You get 4 feet for 99 cents if you're interested or wondering. And so I'm going to go ahead and put these on. The only thing I dislike about these little feet is they've got 4 screws per foot and they're a pain in the butt to get in there. So I first started using my little hand screwdriver, and you have to push down on these screws pretty hard. If you have to do that, I highly suggest you put like a towel or something in the palm of your hand as you're pushing, because I did end up giving myself a pretty good blister on the inside of my hand. Yeah, so just be careful and know that it's a little tough work. Or if you've got a larger screwdriver with the same size tip to it, that would have worked even better. But I ended up reverting to the little socket wrench set my husband had given me, and I used that once I got the screws started. So yeah, this took me a little bit of time to get all those screws put in, but once I get this done, this project is complete, and this will conclude our video. And I hope you guys have a wonderful day, wonderful week. I want to thank you so much for coming in and spending time with me. And don't forget to go check out the playlist. And thank you to Brenda and Christine for hosting this wonderful collaboration. Don't forget, give me a big thumbs up. Leave me a comment which of these was your favorite. And I hope to see you on my next video. All right, bye-bye, guys.